Welcome, everybody. Whether you are here with us today live or you're watching this on our YouTube station or channel, anybody who's here, please say hi in the comments. We'd love to say hi back to you. We've got a little bit of a delay, so no worries, but please say hi and welcome to the presentation. During this presentation, please feel free to ask questions in the comments area and we will answer them at the end. So this event is going to be about the criteria that you might use to decide on whether or not to accept an offer. This presentation is geared specifically to mid and senior level professionals who are considering options outside of their current employer or are looking for a new position. And the reason why we're going to be talking about this topic in particular is to consider what an offer might look like before you actually receive it, and also in preparation for conducting the search itself. So our proposition is that this will actually help you receive an offer as well as giving you some guidance to go on once you do receive it. Introduce myself. My name is Jason Sanders. I lead Flycast. We're a boutique executive search firm. We're focused on the consulting and software industries. I have helped global companies like BCG, Bain, and Accenture over many years, but more importantly, I have helped executives in transition, have counseled them, helped them get jobs, and spoken with thousands of executive job seekers over the course of my career. I'm here with Jonathan Phillips. Jonathan, do you want to introduce yourself?
I do. CEO of Magellan International. Love what I do, helping companies grow businesses, helping individuals get control of their careers. I spent 10 years at Shell, where I got to see big business from the inside out. Been doing the search side now for about 30 years, which belies how old I am in the middle of all this. But a great fun, happy to be here and hope we can be a help.
Yeah, I always go with 20 plus years, Jonathan. That's short.
That's a good
Just 20 years, you have all the credibility you need. But yeah, I'm probably in the same bracket. So assuming that you may be here with an offer today, and if you are, congratulations. Let me just check and see if there are any comments and people that have said hi. I don't see any right now, so I am hoping that we are live because I am sure that we have at least some people here in the room with us. We have scores of people that have registered. So if you're here, please say hi again. I'll leave that out there for you. So presumably you're here and you don't have an offer. You may be lucky and have one in hand, and so we'll be helping you consider that offer. But if you don't, why should you be here at all today? One of the things that we're thinking is that having an idea of what you might do when you receive an offer kind of guides your thinking about where to look. That's one potential area to think about. What about other areas, Jonathan? What do you think?
I mean, the biggest thing about an offer is it's a Damoclesian sword, right? You love it when you get one, but then you go, oh my goodness, what do I do now? So what I do with people most importantly is say, look, before you get to the offer, make sure you know what you want to do longer term and have a clear picture and focus for your career. And it's nice to have a couple of advisors, people you trust that you can share the offer with, just to make sure you don't do the wrong thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that comes up with people is you get an offer, you get very excited, emotional, and you just want to accept it without really thinking it through. And it is important to take a step back. But one of the other things is if you're thinking about what you might like, it will help you negotiate more effectively when you get to the offer stage. So stepping back and then considering your negotiation in from a variety of different angles will be helpful. So I've got some people saying hi. We've got a couple. Warren, hi. How are you? And LinkedIn user, welcome again. We've seen you a lot in the course of our presentations. And I think it may be the same person, Jonathan. Yeah. For some reason, they're kind of logging in as LinkedIn user. So with that said, let's talk about what some of the criteria are that you can use to consider when looking at a job offer. What about this one here, the job itself?
Yeah, so anybody that's worked with me has been through this. We look at, there are 4 criteria here There are two others, compensation and culture, that we fold out into other parts of evaluation because they're more qualitative in some ways. But you want to think, what does the ideal outcome look like? If I get a job offer, where do I want to be working? What industry? What do I want to be doing? And at what level is appropriate? And honestly, a lot of people don't quantify their job selection criteria. I very much encourage you to do that before you jump into the process.
Yeah, I agree. And this is something that comes up quite a bit when I speak with people. They have a variety of different things that they might be looking at. From my perspective, it would be important to choose one, to
Mhm.
start with something for a variety of different reasons that we won't necessarily get into in this presentation. But that's important to just pick some of the real basics before you get started. And then, obviously, it's something that you consider once you have an offer. You have a particular point of view about this one, Jonathan,
Yeah.
career impact,
So
and these dates specifically.
yeah, and what we did in our research, when I wrote my book, the research question hypothesis was, what's the half life of a job? And it turns out to be 2 years. And in
Mhm.
large companies like when I was at Shell, they moved me every 18 to 24 months, so it felt pretty natural. Turns out that remains largely true even today. And people, when they go from one company to another, that 2 year job hurdle still exists. So at the end of 2 years, when you've done your job, what does that new company decide to do with you next? That 24 to 36-month hurdle, that's where you need to be well integrated. You need to have chosen the job correctly, be able to really excel, build relationships so you're not last in, first out. Very
Yeah,
important to think about that as you're getting an offer during the interview. What would happen if? What does my career look like 36 months from the day I joined? I get the job done. What's next? Think about that even as you're looking the offer over.
yeah. I think that's fair. It offers perspective, and from just a resume standpoint, it's helpful if you can stay somewhere 2 or 3 years. You really don't need to stay somewhere for 5 years or even 7 years. But even apart from that, it's I think you're right. I think it is important beyond whatever the initial project is to consider that. Compensation and negotiation. This one is really very important to consider this from the start because things could come up in different ways. So, for
Yeah.
example, you may find that you need to compromise on certain things in order to get others. It may be lifestyle choice. For example, you might take less money for a position that offers you a better lifestyle. The other thing is that when you are approached initially by a recruiter or have an initial interview, one of the first questions that's going to come up somewhere in that is what is the compensation that you're looking for? You want to be prepared for that. You may feel comfortable saying what you're earning now or what you earned in your most recent position, and that's fine. But it is something that to consider because it does set things up. And when you tell somebody what you have been making or what you're looking for, it sets a benchmark and also gives somebody a criteria to screen you against. So in other words, if I have a role that's paying 200,000 and I'm talking with somebody that's making 150, I don't think they're senior enough. And if they're making maybe 250 or 300, then I don't think that they're going to really want this job or stick in it. So it's important to think about, particularly if your compensation is substantially different than what it might be, to consider how you will express that in that initial conversation. What do you think, Jonathan?
Yeah, absolutely. You begin negotiating compensation with the first interview. My other pragmatic advice is if you're asked about compensation, be as disclosive as you can be, because that criteria, particularly for human resources, that dramatically impacts what they decide to do next. So if your comp is a lot higher, they may frankly say, you know what, you might be a better fit for this. And with most
Mhm.
people, especially if they have more than 20 years experience, there really is no job out there with their name on it. I say that a lot. But the
Yeah.
reality is when you begin interviewing, especially if you're good at doing it and you know where you want to go, you've done your planning, you're thinking long term, you can make it very easy for the human resource people, for the hiring authorities to say, you know what, Gail, we really like you for this job, but you might be a better fit for this, which we haven't actually publicized yet. Remember that even in the interview to offer stage, you want to build advocacy. So you want to think about negotiating in good faith early on, even in the first interviews.
Yeah. No question about it. Absolutely. Family and lifestyle. This is something that I don't hear that much. I hear some about this when I have conversations with people. But really, it is something that's important, and it's something that has come up more and more these days. Especially since COVID, it is something that has come up more and more. What have you seen and experienced, Jonathan, in this area? How do you consider this?
Strangely enough, family. So if I'm working with someone before they get to the offer, I often talk about family and lifestyle in our O1 slide, the job itself, because I think it's really important that you build a community of work. You got to think collectively. When I come home, how am I going to feel about all this? And if I'm going to be there 36 months and longer, I've got to really like the people I'm working with. And do they do the things I like? Is the job located in an area where my family can do the stuff they really want? It's really important to involve your significant other, however you define your family. Hard to talk to them if they're just cats, for instance, but you get where I'm going with this. You want to consider equally the family and lifestyle implications before you get to the job offer if you can. But certainly it's a reasonable thing to think about because you want to be happy at work. You really want to be happier when you get home as well. Community of work considerations.
Yeah, absolutely. The company, obviously, this is important.
Yeah.
You want to work for a company that you respect, that you believe in their mission, their values. But probably what we're talking about here is defining that ahead of time, not just size and industry, but what are some of the intangible things that you might look for when considering the kind of company that you might work for? What do you think about that, Jonathan?
I mean, Jason and I went back and forth on this because I put the company in my sort of job criteria selection bucket. But Jason made a very good point, as have others, and I agree because I end up doing it. You want to think about, do you want to work for this company at the beginning? Yes. But where you really want to think about it is after you get the offer. You stand back and say, okay, they made me an offer. I love the job. I think I'm going to stay there a long time. What is this company about again? It's that review at the end that's extremely compelling. To the extent that you can look on their website, you should, because companies will state what they really believe and they really will try and live to it. And it's great if you have, again, 3 people you trust and say, look, do you know about this company? Not just what you see on Glassdoor, for instance, but deeper. People that
You can
know
do
them, people
references.
that know you and say, you know what, given what we've done together, this might or might not be a great company for you. It's perfectly acceptable at the end when you get the offer to do that final revisit. Do I really want to do this?
Yeah, absolutely. No question about it. And then, of course, the work environment, leadership teams, and culture. What do you think, Jonathan?
First 100 days, everybody talks about it. I try and talk my clients through it early in the process. At the 24 to 36 month discussion point, I'll say, what is it like actually? What is a day in the life, a week in the life, a month in a year? What was it like actually doing it? That work environment. So you say, look, I like this. It's a great offer. Here's what I think I'd like to do in the first 100 days. What do you think about this plan? And what you want to listen for are time, money, and people. How much time are they going to give you to accomplish these things? What's the budget for getting it done? Who are the people you're going to be working with? And Jason captured it, leadership teams and culture. How is it going to work actually doing the day-to-day stuff to be successful in the job so you can convert it at month 24 into a great career?
Yeah. And one of the things, especially for you data-oriented folks, and I'm sure we have quite a few here, is to create sort of a scoreboard for this, maybe 5 for each. So you have a total score of 30 as the possibility, as the top. And if it's less than 15, it's probably not something that you should consider. So you can use your own thinking there as far as that goes. And then there's one other thing which it's not necessarily something that you're going to use as criteria as to whether or not to accept a position, but certainly is important to consider. And that is any existing non-competes that you might have, the contract itself that you might receive in the offer, and that's something that, if at all possible, to have reviewed by an attorney. And then there are counter offers, which are really potentially dangerous. What about that, Jonathan?
Yeah, I agree with all of that, and it harkens back to the third, O3 bullet point in all of this, which is the negotiation. At the very least, you want to be prepared to renegotiate the first offer just once with a sign-on or something you might want to change. You want to think about the legal implications of the offer because that affects your career long term. And you want the negotiation process and all of your considerations to leave a positive impact. So, how you frame the negotiation process as a win win is terribly important. And so, I think getting outside input, particularly around the legal parts of the contract to avoid any big issues that you might miss, very important for the negotiation part of the process.
Yeah, absolutely. No question about it.
And then
We,
counter offers are a whole separate discussion and problem, but in general, the answer is avoid counter offers from the beginning. You want to
yeah,
make sure this makes so much sense that you don't let your current firm try to counteroffer, because that's the fastest way to burn a bridge and to ruin your current political capital and your relationships at your current firm. Really need to avoid it. Easier to come back actually if you don't allow them to begin the counteroffer process.
interesting. Yeah, yeah, I hadn't thought of that. We've reached the end of our 15 minutes. We do have a question here, and I wanted to let you guys know about next week. We have a guest next week. Jonathan's going to be leading. I'm actually out, and he's going to be speaking with John Firth. Do you want to say anything? Oh, the topic is ageism. So we'll get a portion of you, I'm sure, that are interested in this topic. It's a very important one, and something that a lot of people have run into. So.
Yeah.
Should be very interesting. Do you want to talk about John Firth at all?
Yeah, I mean,
Jonathan,
John's worked as a partner in a consulting firm. He's worked in industry. He's built association groups before, and so he has a very interesting perspective. He's been at this a long time, and one of his comments about 3 years ago was, ageism kind of happens at the beginning. There's a preference for young people, then there's a preference for how senior you need to be to enter middle management. Then there's this client preference for people with gray hair to deal with customers that are somewhat older. And then there's this, what do we do with senior executives when they pass the age of 50? What do we do? Because companies begin end gaming your career at that point, but most candidates don't think of it that way. And so ageism is something you need to think about, all different points in your career, but you do need to think about how to address it. Very different how to address it later on, but it's something to consider. And John has some great insights on this.
yeah, yeah. It isn't just for people over 60, right?
Yep.
There are a lot of angles to that topic for sure. We have one question here from Warren. Warren Patterson. Thanks very much. This makes total sense. I'm not exactly sure what that was in reference to, but probably 24 to 36 months. Would you offer the same perspective or something different on the 24 to 36 month for PE-backed firms and offers?
Yeah, if you're in a PE portfolio company, beginning on the first day of the second year, so beginning in month 13, you need to begin to talk to the PE firm about your next gig. You need to have a very clear success plan for letting them get their money out after 3 years. And at the beginning of the second year, you need to talk to the PE firm you're working for about what the next thing is you're going to do, and expect to try and leverage your own contacts to help them figure out also what to do with you. Just in general, what you want to do if you're in a portfolio company is agonize through the decision, should I become a principal in the PE firm? Because that's really the better long-term career option. Working in a portfolio company, it's a series of 2 to 3 year jobs, which sounds great, but it can get to be exhausting and not that productive over time. You really need to say, do I want to become a principal in the PE firm itself? And that's a whole separate career discussion, and they need to look at you very differently to do that.
Yeah, and just looking at that move, I especially do a lot of work in the software industry with startup software companies, and what I advise people, and particularly working with consultants, is that when considering moving to a company like that, it's important to consider this as a career change that will take time beyond the initial hire, beyond the first job. So, think about being successful in the third position, not the first or second, so that if something goes wrong with the company or it doesn't work out for you personally because, it's not a fit for you in some way, that you have a bit of a longer term perspective on what it means to make that kind of decision to move in that direction. Yes, we do have a date and time set for ageism. That's the same time as this next week. So we're both in Central Time Zone. So we're at 11 o'clock a.m. Central Time next Thursday, and that will be posted. We'll also hopefully have you on our email list, Warren, and send you a notification that way. So I'm sure that we will look forward to, particularly Jonathan, look forward to seeing you next week. And thanks everybody for coming. Appreciate you having you here, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you all so much.